All righty. Good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 10 of the Fleri Care Digest. Today is a particularly um, important session, primarily because we get to speak to Yewande Adewusi, who is the Group Executive Director at Tangerine. And while we're primarily focused on healthcare for the most of our conversation, I think it's important to mention that, Yewande, your experience and the work that you do at Tangerine goes way beyond just healthcare. And you've done so much over the last few years that I'm eager to get into. But I would like for you to introduce yourself to all of the listeners. Tell us about yourself.
All right. Thanks, Sam. Happy to be here this evening. And it could be morning where you are, or you're in bed and very late at night in another part of the world, but I'm happy to be here. So Yewande Adewusi, let me tell you a bit about myself. So I'm currently the Group ED commercial at Tangerine, overseeing um, the sales, retail and corporate, marketing and comms, customer success, and partnerships and wealth management across the group. So it's a wide remit, but it's very exciting because Tangerine's trying to do quite a few exciting things. But so before I go into Tangerine, I'll just tell you a bit about myself. Like you said, a bit of a varied experience. Started off as a pharmacist, so this is a dream come true for me, finding a way back to healthcare in a different way. Worked at Pfizer and a planning analyst bringing in new products into Africa at the time. And then somehow in the great consolidation in banking, I found myself in financial services. And then I somehow moved into retail and digital. So before there was a fintech, it was nothing. And that was what I was in at the time. It didn't have a name. Nobody knew what it was. It was this thing of making transactions on your phone. And I was always so challenged by that in terms of, oh my God, you mean we can make payments from anywhere in the world using your phone? You can access insurance via your phone, anything using the phone and then M-Pesa came around. That was very exciting in Kenya. So just seeing how that we could access, because the rural, then we had no connectivity between locations, right, and banks and whatnot. So it was such an exciting time to be part of that space. And then moved to Airtel Money. I worked in Afina, which is a development agency promoting access to finance. So I remember several bank MDs that exist now throwing me out of their office when I was saying, yeah, we can give you funds to create products for the poor. And they were looking at me like, no. So it's interesting to see them, a lot of these MDs now championing financial inclusion. At the time, they wouldn't say that, it was like a bad word. But I'm glad that we've moved along and moved into Airtel, running Airtel Money for Nigeria. And then I decided to take a break and decide to promote Africa to the world at BBC. Very excited about that role. It was about promoting FDI and just positive stories from Africa, right? And somehow I found myself itching to go back to financial services and digital financial inclusion. And I found myself in Tangerine, which is doing very exciting things. Um, Tangerine isn't, I mean, it's a great, I mean, it's a name and you think, oh my gosh, what a startup. But we are actually many acquisitions brought together under one umbrella. We started off with Metropolitan Life and then acquired ARM Life. These are major insurance institutions, life insurance institutions in Nigeria that we acquired under the Tangerine umbrella. Then we decided, oh, we need general insurance. So we acquired Law Union Rock in 2021, 2022, early 2022, 2021. And we now said, oh, pensions is another area that we should have under our book. So we first acquired AXA Mansor Pensions and then APT Pensions. And our final acquisition, well, not final, our most recent acquisition is Total Health Plus, which is a major health insurance provider in Nigeria, one of the top ones. And so this is what brings us and Fleri together, because Tangerine is set out to be the leading insurance and pension solution provider, giving access to those things in the communities in which we operate, and hopefully using tech to do it, but definitely just about making access to those services available. Yeah.
I really appreciate the expanded view of your background and as well as how you ended up at a Tangerine. But in the midst of all of this, I know that there's a bit about your background that you didn't touch on, which is the intersection of being able to provide care, being able to communicate the value of the care, as well as your background. You were once regional director for the BBC. Incredible work that you've done. You're very well known. You've done so many different things and positioned a lot of regional brands, both locally, but also to be internationally recognized. I'm going to start off by allowing you to let the audience understand how your experience in communication, your experience at the global brands that you've built, how that ties into the level of advocacy and the big challenge that we know we've had in the healthcare space, which is to make insurance not just affordable and accessible, but also understandable to our local market. Tell me how that was part of everything that made you the right person to be leading this company in this endeavor.
I think, okay, if I look at my work when I worked at BBC, one thing that was very critical, I mean, I was trying to take a departure from financial services, by the way. This was me having a midlife crisis or pre-midlife crisis, and I didn't want anything to do with it anymore because it's been such a challenge. Anybody who's been in the fintech, digital financial space knows it's a hard slog. You need to really commit to it. You have regulatory issues and whatnot. But if you can stay the course, you can see how everything's evolving now, everything's being accepted. Africa, how many unicorns do we have now? But the main thing is getting that message across. And if you're trying to state the value, there's one thing to say the poor Africans and that sort of thing. But one thing is say there's more than poor Africans there. They want access. There is money in Africa. We just need to get it from A to B efficiently, right? And telling those stories is so important in terms of connecting the dots for people through very clear messaging. In terms of, like you said, apart from getting access, the people you're trying to give the care to need to understand the why. So why should I pay for insurance? Why should I trust? In Africa, we know there's an issue. Globally, nobody trusts insurance, but Africa, it's even worse. So I've got 100 naira or 100, shillings. Why should I pay for insurance? I need to eat. So it's that creating that value in terms of why depend on someone in that last minute when something comes up, as opposed to paying a little bit every month or a little bit every week, so that if anything does come up, you've got the cover that you need. We also know about diaspora. There's so many stories about diaspora remittances, all the money coming into Africa. And what is it doing? It's going from the international market to a money transfer agent. You give them cash. Hopefully the cash gets to where it's supposed to be. The person asks for health care, and you're hoping that money gets there. But the beauty of the Tangerine Fleri story is that now it's not about transferring money to an MTO, a money transfer organization. It's just creating that access straight away. So you've got parents back at home, many people, especially, the whole, I'm sure you know the term we have in Nigeria, japa. Everybody's jakpaing. So you want to make sure whoever you've left behind is covered. You don't want to have that panic that your loved ones don't have access to healthcare. So why not just make them understand that the insurance is there, it's paid for. Know the hospitals and clinics you can go to, and it's seamless. It's that seamlessness of knowing that I'm going to present my card or I'm going to present my number and I have no issues. So that, for me, telling that in terms of the demand side and the supply side, in terms of the remittance market, your money is safe. It's not going to be diverted, and it's going for what you want to support in Africa. And two, the person who's going to use it is that when you do present your card, you're going to get the healthcare you need, the quality healthcare. There's wherever you are, there's the right sort of hospital. You'll have the right sort of doctor see you. You'll get the right sort of treatment, and you don't have to worry about out-of-pocket expenses because it's covered with the plan that your loved one who has left you in the country of where you are wants to give you access to share that that wealth that has been created in another market with you in Africa. So that's just it's just a beautiful story. There I'm going to the BBC thing, it's about telling a story, but it isn't a story that's just for storytelling's sake. It actually is connecting the dots so I've got the money here. I want to give it to someone there, and I want to make sure when they get the quality healthcare I would give them if I flew down to whichever country, in this case Nigeria, and took them to the hospital myself. So that's it. That's the hope that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think the reason why we set the context is because more often than not, right, Fleri is primarily focused on the diaspora. We have, whether Ghanaians or Gambians or Nigerians or Zimbabweans, the worry is still the same. I have this group of people that I care about back home, and I want to know that I can entrust them in the hands of someone that cares, right? We're putting a face and building that understanding of who the providers are that are actually building for access to care in Africa, right? And so when you tell the Tangerine story, and when we represent Tangerine in the diaspora, when we represent Tangerine through our messaging, through the documentation, through the events that we do, it's important that we tell the story that we know, value, and like, but it's also important for them to be able to understand, who's leading this charge? What do they believe in? What are their values? Why do they believe in the things that they're doing? Because I can tell you there's a lot of skepticism, like you mentioned, right? That comes from a lack of trust that has been benign, has gone on for years. But people like you are not just retelling a different story, but you're also putting, the changes in place to make this. And we're going to dive into that. I want to take some time to ask, your background is varied. You came into this, but what is the story of the organization itself that you're creating, right? When you come together, the people that you're hiring, the decisions that you're making around the plans, right? I want you to present Tangerine's approach, primarily when it comes to healthcare. How are you thinking of healthcare in Nigeria? What challenges and problems are you seeing? And why is Tangerine positioning itself to not just address it, but to lead the charge in addressing this challenge?
Okay. Oh, that's a big one. So, for Tangerine, like I mentioned, we want to make sure give people in Nigeria access to the best quality insurance and pension solutions in any community in which we're operating. So in this particular situation, it's Nigeria. Nigeria, the health, I mean, this is, the healthcare access is varied, right? It's developing, it's evolving every day. The policies are changing, and there's still a heavy demand from, public access and private access to healthcare. So you've got to make it balanced, right? And you want to make sure that wherever you find yourself, you have the right quality of access to healthcare. Like I said, it's not at the lastminute.com. You want to wake up, oh my gosh, I'm ill. And then what do I do? And that's where Total Health Trust comes in, the company we acquired that is now under Tangerine. It has it's not, like I said, Tangerine, we sound like a startup, but none of our businesses are. So this is over 30 years of building quality healthcare. That's even why we're still using the name. It's Total Health Trust, a Tangerine company, because there's such brand equity in the brand. It's renowned for doing what it says on the tin, right? Any company that provides Total Health Trust, THT, health insurance for their staff knows that when they present that card, they're going to get served the right way, right hospitals. They've done the right negotiations. And this is what is key. When I present my card, will I be served? Or is there going to be a lot of story and talk? We have 24/7 call center services to make sure that when you want to claim, you've got, health is not like, I don't know, buying a car. So car insurance is different. I'm going to plan to buy my car and walk in, buy a car during working hours. Health issues can happen at any time. And so you want to make sure that when that issue happens, you're going to get the right level of care, right? There's not going to be any stories, not too much phone calls, not too much out-of-pocket expenses. So you have the right plan for you. One thing we made sure of is that we have flexibility. So there's flexibility in terms of the price points. We've segmented the market, which is very critical in Africa and Nigeria in particular, because we have different levels of of wealth. So you can't have a one size fits all. So we've taken time to say, what do people need? It can't be everything is the same. What a high value, I don't know, Aliko Dangote needs is probably different from someone that works a bus driver, right? So you have to make sure that there's levels that meets everybody's needs. And that's very critical for our plans in terms of accessibility, affordability, and what you would demand for on a day-to-day basis. So we're looking at what do you need in terms of day-to-day treatments. In Africa, it's malaria. It could be, the typhoid and that sort of thing. So make sure at the basic level you can cover that, and obviously go to a pharmacy and get the drugs that you need for that. A bit of hospital cover as well, and then we go all the way up where you say, okay, critical. I'm at a stage where I need to cover for critical diseases, so there's a plan for that as well in terms of, do I have cancer? Do I have this? Do I have? And it's their cover for that. And of course, your premium is going up the more you get. Then you have, I don't want to just be covered in Nigeria. I want options. So there's a plan that gives you Africa cover and UAE and that sort of thing. And then you go to the ultimate, the global elite, where you're saying, okay, I want to go international, which allow people to do that. So you can get served from getting paid from the diaspora. You can go back to the diaspora and get treated. So that tiering is so important in terms of, look at the customer segments, look at what their needs are, and tailor a solution to that. Not a one size fits all, not a blanket, this is what we offer, one product across, but we have different products that meet different people's needs and different price points. So that for us is looking at the market in terms of what is needed right now. I won't care when I need it. I don't want too many stories. And if I have to call somebody, there's someone to talk to me at any time, hence the 24/7 contact center. And then what can I afford? I need this now. So let me have a plan that suits that. And that's how we really looked at making sure that there's access in the market. I hope I've answered the question, but that's our approach in terms of just keeping looking at what does the market need. We're always revisiting our products and say, hey, there's more demand for this. And of course, cost of healthcare is flying through the roof. Inflation globally is all over the place. And so we're trying to constantly review that we don't sacrifice quality because of pricing or that sort of thing. Make sure that they're still getting what they need in those plans and have the right hospitals access as well.
Yeah, I think what stands out in your presentation of these pillars or foundations of the care that you're providing is the understanding that everyone comes to the table with a very different need. The market is not homogeneous. Nigerians are not homogeneous. Their needs are not, right? And so that understanding goes into tailoring different products for different pockets, for different needs, for different healthcare situations. Number two is also this focus on being able to deliver quality at every price point, right? And understanding that if truly you're trying to build a behavior, because prioritizing your healthcare is a behavior that people learn, right? They get to a point where they make the decision of prioritizing their own health, and as such, they need access to health, right? So with that behavior comes the understanding that we need to be able to support you in that journey. As you start to learn a lot more about yourself and the state of health that you're in, we will have a plan that supports you at every step. But it's also understanding that, we operate within Africa and we operate within Nigeria. Wahala day every single day, right? Like it's inevitable, right? And so if we're not going to pull the wool over our eyes and pretend like it's not there, then what do we need to do in order to address that, right? A contact center that's available 24/7 allows you to be able to, access the care that you need as you were promised, right? And then there's also something that you mentioned that's really significant. It's the brand promise that you're making, and you talked about it. The brand equity in the companies that you're acquiring and bringing into the family, right, comes from a recognition that people care about who they're buying from. I mean, there are lots of different healthcare and health insurance providers. Why are they choosing Tangerine? right? It's the brand, it's the promise, it's the realization that they can rely on you. But I think it's also the fact that people are looking for a refresh, right? People are looking to believe in a company that sees something different, right? So you're bringing a lot of agility to an industry that has been around for a long time, to brands that have been around a long time, but getting them to play or dance to a different tune. And I think that's something that stands out of the work that we've seen and the products that you're putting out on that end. Um, I want to go in a different direction where it's not really about the company and what the company is doing, but the questions that we hear a lot more from folks in the diaspora, right? Um, a lot of people wonder, we see a lot of microinsurance plans and microinsurance promises, right? Can you truly get healthcare for 1,000 naira that supports your family in a way that it should, right? And if someone is promising me 1,000 naira, why should I buy the plan that costs 100,000 naira, for instance, right? In that sense. And so these are some of the questions, but it goes deeper than that. People are expecting an outcome, right? And so, from your standpoint, what are some of the things that you check with regards to your provider network that factor into the kind of outcomes you want to see? Is it a focus on, you know, how people get treated, the quality of care that they're receiving? Is it the fact that we're checking surveys and we're hearing feedback? I want you to talk about some of the stories, but also some of the outcomes that you are looking at that point to success with your program and success with the plans that you're creating.
Okay. So you mentioned one thing in terms of a 1,000 naira plan and a 100,000 naira plan. That's straight up monopoly, right? The house at the beginning of the board is totally different to boardwalk at the end, right? So the price point you pay determines a lot of things because healthcare it has unit cost. You have using uh what is it? Cotton wool. It's counted. It's factored in. It's every single bit of the healthcare need is factored into the pricing. So they have to make sure that whatever premium collecting, and remember, health insurance. First, let's educate everybody about insurance. Insurance is about many people paying for few people to claim, right? Because everybody's paying for everybody's like, oh, we're all brothers and sisters. So I've got you covered because we're all paying so that you can be treated, right? And hopefully I don't need to be treated, so therefore you can get more cover. So let's understand the principle of insurance. Now, once we understand that, that is why microinsurance can work. It needs many microinsurance consumers to make it possible for a family to be properly served under a microinsurance plan. So if anybody says, okay, I'm offering, you can buy a plan for 1,000 naira, I bet you that company is trying to get 1 million people on that plan. As opposed to the person on the 100K plan, if you think of Bupa, $10,000, how many $10,000 do you need? So that's what it is. It's a game of numbers. So it's not that you can't get good quality healthcare on a 1,000 naira plan. It's just the company that's providing it. They are chasing the numbers to get that volume so that when one person comes to claim, they are covered because they got all this money from everybody else. Bupa, $10,000 or whoever in 10,000, I shouldn't use the name of a company, but you know what I mean? In terms of $10,000 in 10 places, we're good. Let's go sit down and have a party. But when you're doing microinsurance, it's about a game of numbers. So I'm just telling those in the diaspora, that's literally the way insurance works. It's about the volume. If you have many people, all Africa, okay, Nigeria, 200 million people paying 1,000 naira, we're covered. We're good. We're good. Your family of 4 gets ill, you're good because you have enough volume that they're paid. So that's how they can have a trust in microinsurance. Now, of course, there's controls in terms of what kind of hospital. You can't go to an A-star hospital on a 1,000 naira plan. That's ridiculous because they have, like I said, there's unit costs, every single thing you're using in that hospital, and they put a premium Because if you're in a nice fancy hospital, they got to pay the light bill, they got to pay for the gen, they got to pay for these fancy doctors. That guy you see there coming from UK once in a while to come and check your ear, he's expensive. So you can't expect access to that hospital on a 1,000 naira plan. But there are good quality primary healthcare centers, state institutions that you can access at that price point, right? Even some private, what do I say, local privates, they access
Mm.
at that price point. But you're not going to get an A-star hospital with all the glassy shininess of where you are in America, that type of thing at that price point. You do get what you pay for in this space, to be honest with you. Not that you won't get good quality, it's just the level of the quality changes depending on your premium. I'm trying to remember. I should have written down the second question. So I hope that's answered that bit. There was a second question on.
So before I did ask a second question, but you've actually answered that. The second question was around the outcomes that you wanted to see that point to success in the program. But I wanted to comment on what you just spoke about, right? We get a lot of inquiries that come in and a lot of comparisons of plans that come in. And then only a small percentage of them actually translates into action, which is normal. That's the way that people evaluate. And then over time, people start to realize just how much they need on that end. But I did want to point out, one thing. Nigeria is going through this very strange times, right, where there is a reckoning for a lot of the things that we've gotten used to getting for free. And I think as we're having bolder conversations around, what is the true cost of all of the things that we enjoyed? You've lived outside. Our customers are primarily people who live in the diaspora. So they understand this, right? On average, an insurance plan for someone, a family of 4 or 5, is going to be around $2,000+ in the US. Thankfully, if you're employed and you're not self-employed, you have an employer that's paying the bulk of this, right? This is the way 60% plus of Americans access healthcare. So there's always someone who's paying a portion of that. Now, when it comes to our family members back home, we are the insurance plan of our parents, right? All the sacrifices they did, it's so we could become the ones who subsidize access to care for them in their old age, right? But what that also means is that there's a true cost to providing quality chronic care. There's a true cost to providing quality access to specialists, right? And while a lot of the times we've gotten used to, but why is this so expensive? It's because Nigeria is expensive. It's because good healthcare is expensive. And I think as you've explained through that, I really want to point out, the gratefulness for being honest, right? Most times we find that it's about, let me tell you a nice, sweet story that gets you to come in. And then you realize that what I said was going to cost you 2,000 naira actually ends up costing you a lot more, or has so many exclusions, is essentially useless to you, right? But the reality is that to access good quality care for people that we care about, and there's just one of them in this world, right? We have to pay the right amount in order to do that. And so I'll let you get back to the other question, which is, what are the outcomes that you're looking out for, right? For a person that purchases a plan, for a person that, signs up for a Tangerine plan, what are the outcomes that they know you're looking out for to ensure that they're getting quality in that end, both from the healthcare system, but also from the way that they experience your brand?
Mm-hmm. So we are very close to our providers, always doing surveys, always monitoring, always going back for feedback from customers, because we need to we're the underwriter, but we're not the one giving the care, right? So we need to make sure whoever we're saying that you can go to this hospital is giving you the care to the level that we are saying, come to Total Health Trust, a Tangerine company, and you will get the care that you demanded for. That we said on the tin. The advertising is the advertising, but we want to make sure whatever we're advertising is actually the same as the experience you get when you get to the provider. That is so key to us in terms of matching the words with the action, matching the words with the experience, matching the speed to the, everything we're promising. We are monitoring on various KPI levels to make sure that is the experience our customers, who are our family as well, right? Because we are trying to make sure that if my mom went there,
Mhm.
if my mom went there, what do I want her to experience? This has nothing to do with, I just work for the company. No, if I sent my mother to a provider under the Tangerine, one of our plans, how would I want my mother to experience this, right? And this is the same thing with the diaspora. We're not there because sometimes you just want to say, even me in Lagos, I won't have time. Mommy's calling me, oh, I need to do this. Here, just go and sort yourself out. Do you know what I mean? Go with the driver and get yourself sorted. But I want her to have a positive experience. I don't want any complaints from her. You don't want to hear complaints from my mother. It's not easy, right? So you want to make sure that she left her home, she wasn't feeling great, or she just wants a checkup, and it was seamless. So we're monitoring responses from our customers in terms of, how was your experience when you went to this clinic? How was your experience? What was the bedside manner like with this doctor? Oh, did you get your drugs in time? Whatever the situation is, we're constantly doing surveys, and it's a two-way street because the providers only behave well when we behave well, right? We make sure we pay our providers on time so that it's a two-way street. I pay you on time, you serve my customers, the patients properly when they come under your care. So these are the major things in terms of, we promised, does the promise match what you experienced when you went into the channel? So that for us is the main thing. So we're looking at it from various levels, from providers to the pharmacies to the testing to whatever. And from the providers, we expect them to also give us feedback. Did we, do what we said we were going to do for you as well, so that we don't give them the excuses to mistreat our clients? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really appreciate you answering that, because I think a lot of the time people think of the underwriter as the person who's concerned with premiums, the person who's collecting these premiums, and then it's like, when you have a problem, you're on your own. You're talking to a customer service person. You're at the hospital. You're in queue. And then waiting for the service, and it's like nobody is paying attention to you, nobody is listening to you. So let's speak a little bit more about that. We talked about outcomes, right? What does coverage actually look like with Tangerine? How did you think about the states? For a person who lives in London right now, or lives in Australia, right? They have a mom in Ekiti, they have a mom in Anambra, they have someone in, Bauchi. How are they thinking about it? Like, can you actually serve them? Where are you? Where is your coverage? Talk a little bit about the practicalities of what you've built, and how it's serving, or how someone who's outside is thinking about it. What are your answers to them?
Okay. So, like we said, we're here to serve in the communities in which we operate. This particular community is Nigeria. And what we've done is a network of hospitals, hub and spoke. So you can have the major big hospitals in key cities, and then you have, are just following the healthcare network, right, in Nigeria. Because we can't create it. We're the underwriter. We're not building hospitals, but we are making sure that where our customers are, we can serve them effectively. So that's understanding the hospital distribution network, the clinic distribution network, so that if you click on a particular state, and if we don't have that state, we can actually go and do, if it's not, we can start saying, oh, we have a demand in this particular location more than we normally do. So let's start looking at expanding our tech, having partnerships in that location. But ultimately, in many of the key cities, not just the usual Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, but beyond that, and making sure that, oh, someone's father lives in Abeokuta in Ogun State. Okay, what's the main hospital there? What's the clinic? What are the typical things that we're constantly making sure the hub and spoke model in terms of building out a distribution network of providers is the way that we make sure that if you want to come onto the Total Health Trust Tangerine Company plan, we can tell you this is where they're going to be served because this is the nearest, and you can decide, is that the hospital you want? Okay, not, if you want to look at this, and we can say, oh, this is a provider we do or do not work with, but we're honest, open and honest about it. But we do make sure, because we're trying to make sure we're almost like a particular brand everywhere you go. But yes, we are everywhere. We do make sure we have a wide network of hospital and clinic providers across the country.
All right. I want to pause here and then reintroduce you to those who are joining anew. There's some comments in. Omolara Aluko has mentioned the fact that Tangerine's plans are really not just about focusing on the healthcare. It's also about the well-being services and the ancillary services that come with that. And I will ask you about that when we get in. But also, it's interesting that people are listening to this, trying to weigh, okay, you just made my job harder, right? Because I'm seeing all of these other providers and I'm seeing all of these other providers. And now I'm hearing from you and there's a face to it. And so, do I just purchase a plan from Tangerine simply because Yewande is talking about it, or how do we think about it globally? But for those of you who are listening, we're speaking to Yewande Adewusi from Tangerine. She's Group Executive Director. She's had an amazing, wonderful career prior to coming to Tangerine. But in the time that you've been here, there's so many different things that have happened, the brand announcements, the acquisitions, but also this focus on reintroducing health insurance through Tangerine in a very different way than we've seen in the past. Your brand has become very accessible. I actually have known people who've worked for Tangerine and people who continue to work for Tangerine outside of the executives. And I think one of the things that you've done very well is create this environment where the folks who work there are also very much connected to how the brand is being seen and accepted outside. So it's a pleasure having you here. I really appreciate you taking your evening to connect with us today, but also to educate our audience in the diaspora.
Thank you for having me. This is what we're trying to do: connect and educate. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, awesome. So we're going to get in and dig in a little bit more, right? I see Omora doing a lot of advocacy there, answering some of the questions that we have. So, pharmacies, wellness. I want you to talk about the design of the product. Obviously, you're not an actuary. You lead the strategy, you lead the team, but also you're ensuring that people are purchasing the plans, right? So it's built for people to use, right, and fits into their life. Tell me a little bit more about, beyond someone getting sick, going to a healthcare facility, how is Tangerine, how is Total Healthcare thinking about whole health, especially on the preventative part, especially on the support part? And I'm not going to give you any answers, but I want to hear how you are thinking about this, because we know what it's like, right? My mom lives in Ghana, and it's a pain getting her to be able to go, even to get a checkup. So what are you doing differently?
So one thing the Total Health Trust, Tangerine Company, is very committed to is wellness and well-being, because if you are well, we can stop you from getting to the hospital part, right? If we're building those good health practices in terms of, for example, we're really keen about in terms of physical fitness. So the plans also have gym memberships. So, in terms of access to gyms, because we're saying that, okay, prevent, this is taking me back to my Pfizer life, I don't want to give you statins and everything else for your heart condition. Why don't I help you stay fit and keep your heart healthy, so that I don't need to put you on drugs and you don't need to be visiting the the doctors. And we're also realizing COVID made us realize mental well-being is so important. So also having well-being solutions for your mental health is also part of this holistic approach to healthcare that we're providing. And some people are never going to walk into a hospital, so we need to make sure that we have access to pharmacy. So in Africa, you can go into a pharmacy and pretty much pharmacists, it's a totally different world. I'm thinking about when I trained in the UK, it's a totally different world to in the first world. Pharmacists literally, everything has to be prescribed. But in Africa, the pharmacists really serve a first line of consulting to the community. The community pharmacy, that's what it used to be called, and that's what it is. And in Africa, it still serves that purpose, because before you run straight to a hospital and queue and do all sorts of wonderful things, the likelihood is you'll go to a pharmacy. So having that network of pharmacies as part of our structure when you have a situation is part of that, realizing the first point of call and sometimes is that community pharmacist. So how can you access a bit of care and access to the drugs through your community pharmacist? So wellness, as was mentioned in the chat, in terms of, I just need a place to know that beyond I'm now ill, how do I prevent myself being ill? So we're very involved in a lot of workplace wellness sessions, education, preventative in terms of testing, um, cardiovascular, your heart rate, your cholesterol rate, and that's what, and even just seeing your body mass index, what is going on there. So we do a lot of those partnerships with a lot of corporates that we work with, and we're trying to make sure that prevention is better than cure, as the saying goes. And so the more people we educate in terms of how to live a healthier life, promoting health and wellness, both physical and mental. And then this whole thing is the community is the pharmacy is the first point of call before you ever think about going to a hospital. So we're trying to make sure we have a holistic approach to access to quality healthcare.
That is very, very well said, and I appreciate that focus on it. I think a lot of the times we tend to focus on, I'm purchasing this plan so that when my mom or my uncle or whoever is sick, they can go to the hospital. But it's important to note that one of the reasons why Tangerine stands out for us is the fact that, the gym routine, wellness, going to get a yoga session, right? That access to those services that keep the mind and then keep the body in tune and shape well, even before that, right, it's also covered. And I think it's a new way of thinking about it. Few people are starting to understand that, yeah, we are behind, but are starting to understand that these things are inextricable. Leading me to the next question. Obviously, Fleri as a startup, we see a lot of other startups in the healthcare space. We work with a lot of healthcare startups that are also bringing products. And a lot of the time, some of the things they talk about is how can we create a connection between one product that really can help an insurer, for instance, reduce possible claims, right? Here in America, we see this all the time. Insurers are payers at a huge level, and everybody sells into them. We haven't quite seen that on the continent yet, right? And so there are, companies like, Pharmacy, right, which is on the Fleri platform. Pharmacy provides access to, monitored pharmaceutical support, prescription management, and helping people understand the effect of the dosage that they have on themselves, right? A lot of people take medication. They don't know when they are overdosing. They miss a day and they think they need to catch it up, right? Who checks and who follows up on things like that? We're working with Plato's Health, right, which is focused on improving life outcomes for people living with diabetes, right? There are lots of these different startups that are building innovation that could come in to support. How does Tangerine Africa look at this market? How do you see yourself within this broader spectrum of people who are building solutions, and how do you become an ecosystem enabler in being able to drive the entire ecosystem towards creating better health outcomes for Nigerians?
Look, I mentioned something that when I got into this space, there was no such thing as fintech. So I'm going to be an OG now. Can I be an OG? So, the thing is, the beauty of the tech space, the tech ecosystem is that there's so much innovation. The thing about being an underwriter is that we're behind. We're always it's like being a bank. When they say, oh, the banks are behind, you're not going to be as nimble as the startup that can tweak the product in 5 seconds without all the different controls that we have in a larger institution. So there is where the partnerships come together. There's a partner we have that we're working with called Move, that they've gone something, it's all about gamification of your fitness, right? So it has the app and it's marked your whole body, and it's you gamify how fast you're running, how many steps you've done, and all this thing, and it leads to points that is linked to your, obviously for us, better health outcomes, because you're gamifying the fact that you're staying fit, and then we link that to your insurance that you're getting. So we're always on the lookout of the right sort of partners to help us in terms of, like we said, prevention is better than cure. If someone can make it easier to look, insurance is not the coolest word. As we all know, it's not cool in any way, shape, or form. So we've got to find the partners that we can work with to either embed the solution, so that as part of your gamifying your steps, Fitbit and all these people build a whole industry around staying fit, right? So imagine walk 10,000 steps a day and get
Mhm.
X amount of points toward your insurance. This is what we're looking at, because when you come and buy health insurance, everybody goes, right? So, it's that thing to make it, how do we draw people to us by putting something in front that they actually value? Because especially in our market, in Africa, where the first thing, our biggest competitor is God, right? So you have to make it such that I value this. I value competing in terms of, I'm running, the whole fit fam that's going on in Africa right now. You see the bridges all covered with people running every morning and all that. So how can you embed this insurance thing into that, in terms of what do I use every day? Those ecosystems that are being built that allows everybody to come into that space every day. I don't think about insurance every day, but I do think about going for my meeting 10,000 steps every day due to this thing on my hand. So how do we make sure that insurance is part of that ecosystem? And that's really key for Tangerine.
That is really, really well said, from that perspective, right? And I think it again highlights this deeper commitment to whole health, not just a short-sighted approach or focus on the service that you're bringing on that side. And I really appreciate you taking time to drill down into that message. Before we get into like the plan compositions itself and what your different plan tiers and others are, I want you to address maybe this last part, right, which came through as a text message here. As an insurer, right, a lot of people are looking towards understanding how they can continue to commit long term, right? But also understanding what the challenge is with finances in Nigeria, right? For young people, for old people, how are you creating financial, maybe an understanding of the financial situation to inform the strategy around commercialization, right? Which is a big part of your role. What does your strategy look like, understanding what people are going through in Nigeria today? You obviously can't make your plans cheaper because your costs are going up as well. But how are you thinking about, terms of payments, periods? Like, how is that going to? How are you going through that?
Mm-hmm. So it's definitely a challenge. I'm not going to sit here and lie, in terms of making things a lot more flexible. In the old days, it's a still premium annual, come and pay us once a year and move on. So that was always, and that's insurance. Collect our money, hold it up, do what we have to do with it, make sure that we can provide the plans and that sort of. But in reflection, it's not easy anymore to do that, especially when you're talking about a large, seeming, comparatively large amounts of money to different people. So we are constantly exploring and developing solutions that we can make sure, okay, um, if we pay the premium in a fragmented, or let's say, either monthly or quarterly or half yearly module, how can we still make sure everybody gets access? Because remember, we said at the top of the conversation, we want your experience to be seamless anytime you need the access, right? Not that we're saying, oh, you've only paid a quarter, so you only get a quarter bit of service. So we're definitely looking at how we can make sure that, because again, it's the law of the many. Some people are going to pay for the full year, some people are going to pay for the quarter, some people are going to pay monthly. So the fact that everybody is together in this, we can make sure that if we have enough of everybody doing different things, we can provide that cover for those who need the flexible, more flexible payment terms. So it is a challenge. We're constantly looking at, like I said, I'm not an actuary, but I'm always looking at them in terms of, I'm the one that's saying, but the market wants it like this, and they're looking at me like, okay. Definitely, it's a thing that we are like, I mean, it's like our pain point. Nigeria is going through a resurgence like that. You said that in the conversation, and we know that inflation is really high at the moment, and we don't want people to drop insurance, because when you're thinking about, do I eat or do I keep my insurance?
Yeah.
We don't want people to drop insurance because they're trying to eat. So definitely making the payment terms more flexible is really critical, and having, periods where, like holidays, payment holidays, we're looking at all those different things. Or if you're consistent with your payments, and never drop off, how can we give you more value adds? So the product development process is constantly being looked at to make sure we're showing value, giving flexibility, making sure there's access, but most importantly, the quality of care is always consistent, irrespective of how
Yeah.
you pay for the service. Yeah.
Mm. That makes a lot of sense, and I'm going to go ahead and then let us walk through on this side. Let us walk through the plans. Maybe you can take some time to go over
Okay.
what these plans look like. You know,
Yeah.
maybe first you talk about the tiers for Tangerine.
Mhm.
Um, why those tiers? What are they aimed at? And then we can quickly touch through a few of them.
Okay. So we're trying to make it as simple as possible, right? Because this is we're making digital access, not too much complication. You want to know at a very high level, based on your payment option, or price point, what can you get for that price point? So we're offering about 4 plans. We have the classic plan, which is in-country cover for day-to-day treatment, a bit of chronic care, can you believe it? Organ transplants are covered there, in cancer care and hospitalization, but you can only have care within Nigeria. So that's the classic plan. The classic critical care plan goes a bit higher in terms of inpatient and outpatient benefits, and
Mhm.
major disease benefits like cancer, organ transplants, kidney dialysis, inpatient treatment for life-threatening conditions and emergencies in Africa or India, when it's not available locally. So that's for the classic critical care plan. Then we're
Yeah.
also offering on this partnership the Plus Africa, similar to the classic critical care, but we're also having access to our premium network across a wider network in terms of Africa, India, UAE, and Lebanon for that plan. So the same as the above in terms of what you're getting, but in terms of a wider coverage. And then the Global Elite plan, Global Elite, I think it speaks for itself. It's a very uh, high value plan, day-to-day treatment, chronic care, organ transplants, cancer care, hospitalization. Very ideal for expats and families who want worldwide cover.
Mhm.
So you have access to our premier network of providers in Nigeria, but also anywhere in the world excluding North America. So that's where the Global Elite plan comes in for those that want global access beyond those 4 countries I mentioned earlier, locations I mentioned earlier, but excludes North America. So you have from, and in these plans, you have benefit from optical care, dental cover, like I said, the well-being, psychological well-being, maternity cover, chronic conditions. You have your in-hospital and outpatient coverage, ambulance benefits, like I mentioned, the major diseases, and that whole for the global elite plan, you also get international emergency evacuation as well. So we're trying to make sure, like I said at the beginning, what is your
Yeah.
need and what can you afford?
Yeah.
The basics will always be provided, right? But the
Yeah.
extension of geographic coverage and the high end nice to haves will differ based on the plan you get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to take some time and then kind of explain why the fascination with the products that you've created, right? So I was a Cigna, and prior to Fleri, and international cover is not easy to come by, right? A lot of people travel. I happen to be in Turkey today, and there are folks that left Nigeria and came here, right? A lot of us living abroad have our families come to visit, and a lot of the time, we always wonder, what kind of plan can I get them when they go visit Dubai for vacation, right? What kind of plan is covering when you're traveling to Europe and you're filling out that Schengen form, and it asks you, well, you need health insurance coverage, right? While you're visiting any Schengen area country, um, what kind of plan should you be on in order to be able to access this? And for the first time, right, and I don't say this lightly, we have a whole number of other providers on the platform, but you have one of the most comprehensive plans that addresses a key challenge that everybody knows about but completely ignores. The fact that Nigerians as a people, spend over $1 billion every single year on foreign travel for medical services. When that sinks into our heads and we think about it, people going to Thailand for care, Malaysia, Beirut, right? Folks that are traveling to Singapore for care, right? And constantly having to pool money together just to do this. I think you're solving one of the most significant challenges that people know but ignore until it becomes an issue. And for the price points that you're offering this, right? A gentleman came recently to have care at Johns Hopkins, right? It was a Cigna plan that ended up costing in excess of $18,000 for a year, and you have to sign up for a year, right? You don't need to come to America for care, for quality care, right? Unless you have a rare genetic disease that needs some serious researchers to be working on. You could get that same care in Mexico. You could get that care in Thailand. You could get that care even in places like Luca Health in Ghana or specialist hospitals in Nigeria, right? That fly doctors down to be able to take care of you. I think a big part is a lot of people aren't even aware that there are providers that are solving these problems and solving these problems as significantly as you're solving them. So for those of you who are watching and listening, simply log on to Fleri. You don't need to even create an account to see Tangerine's plans, right? But this gives you an idea of what is available within our dear Nigeria and what is available for the people that we love in Nigeria at this point.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is so important to and in educating people about that, like what you just said. I mean, you watch TV and you say, "Oh, the hospital in America is the best thing in the world," but the healthcare has really grown
Yeah.
There's certain places that you wouldn't even think of, and when you see the healthcare facilities there, if you go to Dubai and you see the healthcare facilities there, you say, "Oh my gosh, this is a spaceship." So, just getting people aware that you've got to search the globe for the best health solution and at the right price point, so that you don't, you're creating wellness and your wealth, and you don't want it to be depleted in a major healthcare situation. Like I said, healthcare has unique economics. From the tissue, everything is calculated. Do you know what I mean? And then the hours of that particular doctor is calculated. So when you go to a market that really knows how to do that economic very well, your bill's going to be massive, because that shiny building has to be paid for. And all of those doors that do all sorts of wonderful things with the vacuum locks and everything have to be paid for. So you have to find a nice balance in terms of what you want. Like I said, consistency of the quality of care at the
Mhm.
right price point.
Yeah.
Do not
And
diminish.
I think, yeah, it's super critical to understand that every single year, right? And we look at North America as what the standard is, but remember, millions of Americans, right, travel every year, right, from everything from BBLs to hip replacements, right, to go have them abroad. Why is that? It's primarily because they know that healthcare is extremely expensive here, much
Mhm.
less taking your naira and coming to spend that here, or flying that uncle who is back home, right, and needs a kidney transplant or needs dialysis, and bringing them here instead of in South Africa or Lebanon or in India in that way. And I think the work that you're doing really addresses a missing link that we have in our healthcare system today. Yewande, I really, really appreciate you having joined us today. I appreciate the work that you're doing at Tangerine, the efforts that you're taking to educate and really create an opportunity for Nigerians to get the healthcare that they deserve, but most importantly, to allow folks that are, striving to build their lives abroad, right, to be able to provide and care and support their loved ones in a way that does not jeopardize their own financial future. Really grateful for your time. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode.
Thank you. And we're happy to be partnering with Fleri to use tech to give that opportunity for folks in the diaspora to support their families through a trustworthy channel, and make sure that the quality of care that they want to provide for their families back home is at par with what they're receiving in the world that they're living in.
Yeah,
Thanks.
absolutely. It's a pleasure to partner with a brand as dignified as yours. It's a pleasure to connect with really brilliant people at your company to be able to push this. I think it's a journey that's definitely worth taking, and we're honored to be a part of this partnership.
Thank you, Sam.
All
Great.
right, thank
Looking
you very
forward to
much.
checking this out. All right. Have a great evening or morning or whatever anybody's doing.
All
All
right.
right.
Thank you so much, everyone who joined us today. This has been episode 10 of the Fleri Care Digest. We had the pleasure of speaking to Yewande Adewusi from Tangerine Africa. She is Group Executive Director in charge of ensuring that everything that they're creating actually gets sold. So log on to Fleri, check out their plans, and find the best healthcare for your loved ones. Thank you.